Team Zimbabwe, welcome to Africa and Beyond Television Network. And my name is Ronald Wekwamakusha. So this morning we are taking a look on an opinion piece from Hopewell, Daddy Hope. And it's very important for us to closely look at those opinions and see what other people think in this time. And remember, Zimbabwe is having a revolution, and through this revolution, certain things are happening. Hopewell says SADC has issued its final 32-page report on the Zimbabwean election, which has extinguished hopes for a new election. This is what he says. So, number one, he says the report recommends that all concerned parties to ensure that any grievances with respect to the election results are channeled through the appropriate legal processes to ensure the exhaustion of domestic legal remedies. And he says Zimbabwe's main opposition party, CCC, chose not to go to Zimbabwe's courts, alleging that they are partisan because of the multitude of political rulings that they have made at times, even violating Zimbabwe's constitution. Hopewell has clearly contradicted himself in 2 paragraphs, if not 3. The first paragraph, he clearly indicates that Nelson Chamisa is the cause by Nelson Chamisa for fresh elections. They are no longer feasible. This is what he said. Then he went on to cite something which was noted in the report, and we have explained it times without numbers. But let us get through what Hopewell is saying. Number one, Nelson Chamisa is not obliged to exhaust internal remedies which are biased. What is very important is that in the same report Hopewell is quoting, the SADC Election Observer Mission noted that the courts were biased towards ZANU-PF. The courts did something which violated the Zimbabwe's constitution willingly. For example, the issues of the voters' rolls, the issues of Bulawayo 12, the issues of rallies, which means there was slight possibility that anything was going to work within those courts. If you take a look on the issue of Sevia Kasukwere, it's a true testimony. The Constitutional Court dismissed Sevia Kasukwere's application without even hearing his side of the story. They completely dismissed it without even taking a look onto that matter. They dismissed it. So SADC is fully aware of all those things. And in this report, they give recommendations. And these recommendations, Hopewell is missing a very critical point. They are not only for use by the Zimbabwean government. These recommendations are for use by all stakeholders. Zimbabwean government, the opposition, the electoral body, the regional body, all those bodies, they have to take a look onto the recommendations made. One of the key issues is that the elections fell short, which means it was an acknowledgement by SADC that there was no election in Zimbabwe. So the same report which Hopewell is trying to bend, it has exposed ZANU-PF. It has exposed how state institutions are captured in Zimbabwe. So SADC is aware that anytime things might go south in the nation of Zimbabwe, SADC right now, they're aware of that. They have acknowledged that if the opposition in Zimbabwe decides to act, there will be chaos in Zimbabwe. And the end result of chaos, nobody can predetermine to say, if there is chaos in Zimbabwe, since we have the military and the police, we are going to be safe. You cannot guarantee that. Nobody, those in the ruling party, those in the opposition, those in the diplomatic service, those in the business sector, nobody is safe if there is chaos in Zimbabwe. South Africa, Zambia, Botswana, they understand fully well that if there is chaos in Zimbabwe, supplies are going to be cut, which means trade is going to be very difficult in between these countries. So their business continues as usual. If you take a look on the 2008 situation, there was a recommendation. There were recommendations made. There was no recommendation which was given to SADC, which suggested that elections must be redone, which suggested that a GNU must happen. But the report came and said there was a crisis in Zimbabwe, a constitutional crisis. And when you say the elections which just happened fell short of the constitutional requirements, that creates a crisis, a constitutional crisis. And that equally creates a political crisis. So when you put those things together, the political crisis and the constitutional crisis, and no matter how it is written, this is a clear recommendation to SADC to say the Zimbabwean story at this moment in time is a ticking time bomb. Anytime it might explode. Reasons are on the recommendations, which means the opposition has managed to prove beyond reasonable doubts that this was happening. All stakeholders, the SCOM, they've managed to prove beyond reasonable doubts that something is wrong in the nation of Zimbabwe. These elections were not conducted freely and fairly. And as I mentioned in another episode, if President Mnangagwa, if there is an attempt to remove President Mnangagwa right now, it's difficult for SADC to intervene before they have dealt with this report, because anything which falls short of the constitution is unconstitutional, which means this government, by other means, SADC clearly stated that the government in Zimbabwe is unconstitutional. So when something unconstitutional again happens in Zimbabwe, it will be difficult for SADC to intervene and save an unconstitutional government. So I don't know how Hopewell is failing to read the temperatures and understand things, to say, you are clearly being told, Shamari, you are on your own. Yes, you might choose to be big-headed. Yes, you might choose to embolden yourself. You might choose to say, I don't care about A, B, C, D. But when something happens in your own country, nobody is going to come to save you, because you have set an unconstitutional precedence. So it's very difficult right now for those in politics. They know for sure, those in ZANU-PF, they know for sure that they're in a difficult position. That is the reason why you see they are punishing Nelson Chamisa and his party for refusing to recognize them, because their failure to recognize this government, it means this legitimacy crisis is no longer resolved up until everybody sits down to talk and everything is resolved and everything is corrected. Which means no matter how many months or years it will take for President Mnangagwa to continue as president, this report and its contents, a final verdict will remain the elections fell short of the requirements of the Electoral Act, of the Constitution, and of the SADC guidelines and principles on democratic elections, which means SADC does not recognize Zimbabwe. According to its laws, SADC does not recognize the Zimbabwean presidency. That is what that report is clearly saying. Read it. Maonero ese amungada kuita. You come to the same conclusion. You come to the same conclusion. If a cup is not full, when you are told that something is short, you want 10 meters long power cable, because the distance from point A to point B is 10 meters. If you have a 7-meter power cable, you will not get power. Even if you have a 9 point, if you need 10 meters, you will not in Zimbabwe. Person, any reasonable leader within the SADC should know that evil begets evil. So when evil begets evil, something might happen in Zimbabwe. Remember, there are several people who are disgruntled by what happened. Xavier was not allowed to participate. He's equally disgruntled. Those in the opposition to Ghana, 103 seats, stopping ZANU-PF from having 2/3 majority, which they had with a structureful alliance of 7 political parties, which was well-oiled and well-funded. This time around, an underfunded, structureless party managed to get a clear indication that the opposition is not dead. In urban areas where information is not limited, CCC performed so well, getting 33 out of 34 urban centers. What does that mean? It's a clear indication that kwese kune information iri positive, CCC managed to win. But kumamisha, because of network, because of intimidation, because of violence, they did what they did. And that was beyond CCC's reach. The people who were supposed to be acting, to be working independently to ensure that this election was free, fair, and credible, who are empowered by the Constitution, failed to carry out their task and mandate. So, as I said earlier, weigh the recommendations and what was done wrongly, what was done perfectly. If you weigh and see what was done wrongly, weighing more than what was done perfectly, then understand that Zimbabwe is in a crisis. Go to Eswatini. Eswatini, there are recommendations which were made. But if you take a look on what was said to be good and what was said to be wrong, what was good overweighs what was wrong, which means there is no crisis in Eswatini. But in Zimbabwe, There is a crisis, a real crisis. The constitution of Zimbabwe has been destroyed and has been tampered with several times. So whatever people might think, you'd understand that Hopewell Chingono is misleading people and is wrong. So we are going to see how SADC is going to deal with this matter. But personally, I know that if SADC decides to ignore this report and the recommendations, then you have to know that going forward, Zimbabwe is going to be facing chaos after chaos. That will happen because two key things you have to note are that when something fails to reach a standard, it remains substandard. So no matter how you try to sanitize it, it will never become standard, which means the government we have, according to the report which was released by SADC itself, the government we have in Zimbabwe cannot legally recognized by SADC because it failed to adhere to the electoral law, to the constitution, and to the SADC principles. Which means what we have, if it is unconstitutional, what we have is unlawful. I didn't say that. The SADC report clearly says so. So I believe Hopewell Chingono will need to revisit that report and read it without biasness and understand it and see the repercussions and the implications of this report. Going forward, anything might happen in Zimbabwe, and there is no way the Zimbabwean government led by Emmerson Mnangagwa will go to across the region and on the and across the globe. There is no way the Zimbabwean government will rush to and get help or any assistance because the report has made it illegitimate.